Well, hello and welcome to our live stream today. Today we have a pretty amazing guest. He's a doctor, but not the sort of doctor you're going, well, he might be able to fix broken arms, we could ask him, but he's going to be helping us to look at religious trauma. What is religious trauma? Have we been affected by religious trauma? Well, today our guest is going to be helping us do that. So let's bring on our guest. And how are you, Dr. Darrell?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me up over from down under. It's always
absolutely. So we're both in the PM now. We're just on Sunday and you're Saturday. So
that's right. Yeah, it's 7 p.m. here on Saturday. So we're always behind you guys. You know, you're way ahead. You're much more ahead of us in many ways.
If you insist.
not the least of which you've controlled the COVID a hell of a lot better than we have. I live in Kansas, which is right at the edge of the Bible Belt, and we get plenty of Bible Belt stuff. Yeah, we're close to the Queensland of the United States, by the way. Yeah.
Well, we can't say New Zealand's controlled the COVID because last week we went into lockdown 4, level 4, which means we can't leave the house unless it's urgent.
Well, I would have to go on lockdown level 4 every minute of the day for the last 3 years if we'd have done it the way you guys have, but we'd be out of it by now, probably, or close to it. We're fighting the whole we get that or not here. Crazy people. That's not what we're here to talk about.
No, we won't blame Australia where it came from. Anyway, religious trauma. What can you tell me about it?
Do you want the version or the long version?
I'll leave that up to you.
I can go on forever about it, but let's just begin at the beginning. And that is that we all know what PTSD is. We've heard about it. We've seen it being demonstrated in soldiers and things like that. Oh, shit. I thought I turned that off. Sorry about that. When people come back from war, they have symptoms, oftentimes. Not everybody, but, they have symptoms. And some people respond more dramatically and to the circumstances than others, of course. So it's not something we didn't even understand PTSD. Back in the U.S. Civil War, it was called soldier's heart. That was the name of the disease or the condition, soldier's heart. Then in World War I, as you know, and Zach, soldiers from New Zealand, Australia come back from the war and they've got shell shock. Yeah. That's what it's called in that. And then in World War II, they come back from the various theaters with something we now call battle fatigue. So we've had names for the condition, but we didn't understand what it was or why. I mean, in the early days, they said, well, that soldier's just lazy. They just don't want to work. There's all sorts of moral judgments on people who showed symptoms of PTSD. Of course, we saw it, the United States saw it with a vengeance coming back from Vietnam. Lots and lots of soldiers had symptoms of PTSD. And there just wasn't the science. The science just wasn't there to treat people or to understand what was going on. And nobody really realized it was a condition of the brain. It was a shock to literally our physical brain is involved in this shock that was caused by war. So I want the listeners and I want all your viewers to understand that this concept is not new. We put a little different twist on it we're going to talk about tonight, but it's not new. And in about the year 2003 or so, the United States government saw all these soldiers coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq with PTSD. We now knew at that point in time that PTSD was much more a medical condition. And the U.S. government started putting quite a bit of money into the treatment, or at least the understanding of the condition, what caused it and what treatments might work. And since that time, especially since about 2012, there have been revolutionary treatments for PTSD. And it's been expanded because we now know that PTSD happens in a wide variety of areas. I mean, think about child abuse spousal abuse. When you're in a situation, or even just war to a civilian. I mean, imagine what the civilians are going through right now in Afghanistan. Imagine what the civilians have been going through for the last decade, practically, in Syria. They're surrounded by potential death or injury 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Your brain can only take so much of this. The United States Army, and I'm sure I speak more from U.S. centric just because that's what I know the most, but it's not unique to us. The U.S. Army figured out in World War II that you better rotate troops, because if you don't, you do something to them and they action. Troops lose their awareness after being in high stress battle situations for I think about 3 weeks. That was about the time period that they looked. Now, that doesn't mean they've stuck to 3 weeks. It might have been 2 months or whatever, but they did see the value of rotating them, and they started mid-war and later, especially in the European theater, they started rotating. And that seemed to really help refresh the troops, of course, and it seemed to cut down on what we now know as PTSD. So all these things come together in about 2012. After all this research, the government put a lot of money into it, researched it with MRIs, because at about that time we had this ability to scan a brain and look at what's going on, and to understand that there are physical consequences to being in that extremely high stress environment for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise when a civilian comes out of Syria, that they come out of that situation with what's obviously PTSD. It should be no surprise that if a woman is in an abusive marriage where she has a threat of physical harm almost every day, and she finally gets out of it, gets to a safe home, gets away from the man, that maybe exhibit signs of PTSD. Now, the interesting thing about this and the important thing about this is PTSD is a permanent change in the brain. It is a permanent change in the brain. The amygdala of the human brain has been stimulated over and over and over and over again. We've known this for probably 50, 60 years, that if you put somebody in a highly stimulating situation over and over again, their pituitary gland will grow and get bigger and bigger. Because the reason it grows is the same reason that my muscles, I know I don't have big muscles, but if I use my muscles every day, they get bigger. Well, you're using your adrenal gland every day, it gets bigger because it's putting out the hormone adrenaline and cortisol, and there's a whole bunch of stuff the adrenal gland's putting out. But with this research, they find out the amygdala is being stimulated, and it's doing some other things in the brain that make it respond faster and more often, more consistently, until the main response is trauma response in a woman, a woman in abusive relationships, or a person coming out of Syria, or a soldier coming back from Afghanistan. It doesn't matter if it's a situation where the person is in a constant state of threat. Sooner or later, the brain just kind of adapts to it, and it becomes a permanent situation. Well, let's fast forward now to what we want to talk about today, and that is religious trauma. For years, nobody's really looked at religious trauma, but we have looked at children and trauma. And in fact, the United States Center for Disease Control has done quite a bit of research, and they even have a little test. And your viewers can go online. And take this test if they want. It's called the ACE test. It's Adverse Childhood Experiences. And as an adult, you can take it. And if you score high enough, it may indicate that you experienced childhood trauma, an adverse childhood experience. Now, because you had an adverse experience doesn't mean you were traumatized. It means you have the potential to have been traumatized. So I put all that together. I know it's a long-winded answer, Shane, to what you were asking me.
No, that's fine.
Is this where you wanted to go?
Well, it's good to know where the idea of the religious trauma has come from.
Yes.
So what's the difference between, say, you've got the war, which you've been talking about, you've done the research. How did it jump over to the religious side of things?
Excellent. Well, that's exactly where we need to go. The CDC came out with the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey test, and you can take it and find out that you may have been exposed to those, and as a result, may have experienced trauma. Now, let's be clear. Somebody can be raised in an abusive environment, but they come out fairly healthy. Their brother or their sister in that same environment may be permanently traumatized by it and have a great deal of trouble.
Yes.
And I just look at my own family. There's 4 boys in my family. I'm the oldest. And each boy, and I know this because I've talked to each of my brothers over the years, had an incredibly different experience of our childhood home than I did. You know, I had a pretty good childhood experience, in my view. But you talk to my 3rd brother or my 4th brother, and it was horrible for them. And it was horrible for reasons that I did not experience. So just because you're in the same family doesn't mean you're going to respond to the situation identically. So that helps us understand that children can experience trauma, and they carry that into adulthood. Now let's talk about religion. Religion almost is never pointed at as the cause of trauma. Think about this. You're raised a Jehovah's Witness. You're in a family that constantly harasses you with the notion of Armageddon.
Yep.
Or you're a Baptist and you're being harassed with the notion of hell. And there is no escape. And if you question your parents, you're liable to being punished. You have no contact with other people outside of this Armageddon scary group. You have to go to church 3, 4, 5 times a week. You have to interact only with people who have the same belief structure, who themselves are constantly being harassed and beaten on with these notions of horror, of Armageddon, you know, and you can't even enjoy a simple birthday that all your cohorts are. I mean, I'm talking to Jehovah's Witnesses a little bit because I know a lot of your audiences are. But we could take this and apply it to a lot of other religions. I mean, just think of a Muslim in Iraq, almost the same thing in many ways. So go back to our earlier example of a person in Syria who sees and feels danger every day. A bomb could drop, somebody gets shot, or even an earthquake. I mean, there's lots. Haiti right now, you had an earthquake, and then you turn right around and you have a hurricane. And that's happened multiple times in Haiti. So we could be pretty sure that those people are experiencing clinical trauma. The same thing we could say for somebody raised in that JW environment. They are surrounded with danger. Now, let's get one thing right, one thing clear. They're surrounded with perceived danger. It's highly unlikely that a bomb's going to go off next to the JW's house. But a 3-year-old child does not know that. An 8-year-old child does not feel like that. When dad yells or screams or decides to spank you, there might as well have been a bomb go off. Your brain is going to respond in the same way. Now, it's important to remember that children don't have the resources to cope with what appears to be imminent danger. And a parent who is out of control, a parent who's going to threaten you with hell or Armageddon or beat you because you didn't learn your Sunday school lessons that day, or because you asked the wrong question, feels the same as a child who is in the middle of a war zone. I know it makes no sense, but it makes no sense because we're adults. You and I are sitting here talking as adults, and we have the coping skills. But that 5-year-old child does not. Religion creates a perceived set of dangers around us, and that constant hammering of perceived danger stimulates the amygdala. It stimulates the adrenal gland, and it makes the hippocampus in the brain start patterning a response set to that environment. As a result, you get children coming out of JW homes that are traumatized, and they show the symptoms of trauma. Now, what are those symptoms? Those symptoms can be obsessive compulsive behaviors. Those symptoms can be sleep disorders. They can't sleep or can't get to sleep, can't stay asleep. It can be nightmares and night terrors because they're dreaming about things that their daytime world contains. So that even their nighttime world contains these traumatic events. And also responses. We've all heard the old example of a soldier coming back from war. A firecracker goes off outside the house and he hits the floor like somebody's shooting at him. Well, that is a trauma experience. That is a trauma response. And children respond to their trauma stimulation the same way. They may not hit the ground, but they may start crying. They may lose control of their emotions. I mean, there's a lot of things a child can exhibit as a result of their childhood trauma coming out of religion. Now, the reason we're talking about this here today, Shane, is largely because religion gets a pass. Nobody blames religion. But what we see in the organization I'm passionate about is recovering from religion, which you know a bit about, of course.
I do.
And we see so many people coming to us for relief, for help, for resources, for recommendations, for referrals to mental health. And they have lots and lots of symptoms of PTSD. And when we look at it, we think, wonder why that person called us to talk to us about the nightmares they're having. And when we scratch a little bit below the surface, we find out they were raised in a Baptist church and they were punished for having been caught masturbating. And the whole church found out about it and they were ostracized. They were made fun of. People laughed at them for doing something that any normal kid would do. I mean, that alone could be a massively traumatic experience for a 12 or 13-year-old kid who's just doing what comes naturally to any 12 or 13-year-old kid.
Yes.
And you could add Jehovah's Witness to that. You could add Catholic to that. You could add almost any religion to that.
So you mentioned before that a child growing up in the organization or any high control group has these signs of trauma when they get out. Can that happen, say, from a teenage year, and they, say, might go into a high control religious organization and then get out and possibly have those signs? Yes.
In fact, I write about this in my book, The God Virus, which, of course, I would recommend people read. What happened? Have you ever noticed that? I'll just give you an example. Perfectly normal person. You may have known them. They're intelligent, perfectly normal. Yeah. They're not even particularly religious. Yep. But one day something happens. They get a diagnosis for cancer, or their mother dies, or they get in a car accident. Anyway, something of great difficulty comes into their life. And about that time, the chaplain comes to the hospital room, preaches to them, and converts them. Now, that same person wouldn't have given the time of day to that chaplain a week before. And now suddenly they're joining that church or that cult. Well, what that tells us, and we see this over and over again, that's why I wrote about it in my book. I think I deal with it in chapter 4. It is that when people are under extreme stress and difficulty in their life, that is an optimal time to infect them with religion. If a Jehovah's Witness can knock on your door at exactly the time you're in the most stress in your life, they have a much higher probability of converting you into the cult than if they just knocked on your door, 3 weeks before when you're having a good time and there's no traumatic things going on. And the Catholics learned this years ago. Mormons learned it. That's why Mormons knock on your door. And that's why most Christians want to have. Why do we have Christian hospitals? Why isn't the government in charge of Christian hospitals? In the United States, there's a lot of religious hospitals. It's because when people are sick, that's the best time to convert them to your particular religion. So we have Catholic hospitals. We have Seventh-day Adventist hospitals. We don't. Jehovah's Witness didn't get on that bandwagon, but they missed the boat on that one. But Catholics sure got in on the boat for, religious hospitals. Methodists got in on that boat too. You want to catch people when they're at their weakest, because their rational immune system, and I call it that, rational immune system, is weak, and it can be infected with a virus that I call the God virus. And there's all sorts of religious viruses out there trying to get into your brain, take it over, and make you a victim of, a clone, a zombie of their particular religion. And I mean, how much could I pay you right now, Shane, to go door to door knocking on doors and asking people if they know the flying spaghetti monster?
Maybe $5 trillion, and I still wouldn't do it.
Well, my bank account's not quite that big, but
okay then.
You cut that down to yen or something, maybe I can swing it.
Okay. I don't mind US dollars.
Okay, right. So the answer to your question is yes. One of the most traumatic or potentially disruptive times in any human being's life within Western culture is adolescence. And so a child who is in great stress is very susceptible to getting religion. That's why you see so many kids converting somewhere around 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. I can give you dozens and dozens of examples of people who weren't particularly religious, weren't even raised in a particularly religious home, but they converted because somebody knocked on their door, or because their best friends converted, or something like that. The religions have studied this literally for centuries. And they know, religions know how to get into your brain. And that's why I called my book The God Virus, because it's like COVID. It wants to get into you and propagate to the next person. When a Mormon knocks on your door, they're trying to sneeze on you. When a Jehovah's Witness knocks on their door, they're trying to sneeze on you, trying to give you their God virus. And if I sneeze on you when your immune system is weak, you're much more likely to catch my cold. I will sneeze my cold onto you and you'll get my cold. If you've got a strong and robust immune system, I could sneeze on you, but you might not get the cold.
Yes.
So that's the way it works. And we have a rational immune system that comes with good education, critical thinking skills, skeptical thinking skills, and adulthood. You get up to about a certain age. The Jesuits used to say, "Give me the child till 7 and I'll give you the man." Have you heard of that before?
I have heard of that.
A
while ago.
Yeah, give me the child till 7, I'll give you the man. Well, it means if I can brainwash your child, if I can infect them with the Catholic virus before 7 years old, they'll probably stay in the Catholic Church the rest of their life.
Yes.
And Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. That's why it's so important to get people when they're children, because it's really hard to infect people when they're adults, as you Jehovah's Witnesses know. How many doors do you knock before you get one convert?
Well, I did hear a figure with regards to the cart witnessing before COVID came down. They spent hundreds of thousands of hours, got about 8 studies, and only one of them did anything. And in the US. So you tell me.
Yeah. They changed their tactics during COVID. I've gotten 2 letters from JWs during the last 18 months. They stopped coming to my house.
Yes.
About 10 years ago, after I pulled my book out, The God Virus, and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you guys, but first, would you read my book and I'll read your book?"
And they would run.
They couldn't get out of there fast enough. It was cooties. I catch the cooties. Yeah, it was kind of funny. I didn't realize my book would just holding my book up and saying, I'll read yours if you read mine. They really got scared and ran, and they never came back. I've been trying to get for years. Thing that got But they sent me the letters I noticed.
Maybe they put you on the do not call list.
No,
And now
maybe.
because of letters,
Yeah.
they're not looking at do not call list. But anyway.
Yeah, they're not. Probably not. So I hope that gives you some idea. Let me just come back to the childhood experiences. One thing that the ACE test does not have is a component about religiosity. But think about this. How many people would probably score high on the ACE test, meaning they had experienced some serious childhood experiences? If I ask a few more questions of those same people, I find that a significant number of those people were raised in a high control religious family. So instead of adverse childhood experiences, we could now call it adverse religious experiences. It's name it. And of course, the CDC in the United States is scared shitless of attacking religion, but I'm not.
Yes.
So I would just like to add a few questions to the CDC's survey and find out if you survey and you have that's high scoring. Let's find out if there was any religion involved in that. And I'm pretty sure you're a high percentage of religion involved in it. In which now we can talk about religious trauma. We spent, almost an hour of our talk today getting where we're at now. For that,
yep.
Shane, is because I don't think people understand the chain of events and the research and how we got to where we're at and why we're calling it religious trauma. Arlene Winnell out of San Francisco Bay Area named it about 10 years ago. She coined the term religious trauma syndrome. And she has gotten a lot of kickback, a lot of argument, a lot of people saying, no. Well, I'm on her side and I'm pushing as hard as I can, as are other people. I can say, I've been a psychologist for years. I've seen this over and over again. But what I didn't have was a name for it. Now I've got a name. When I have somebody exhibiting trauma, I turn around and scratch a little bit to find out what caused it. And I find war, not a refugee from Syria. They were abusive, marital relationship, but they were raised in a home where they were constantly harassed with these crazy ideas. And now we can talk about how do you treat this trauma, but you got to be able to name it first, and you got to be able to look at the symptoms and decide, are these symptoms trauma, or is it something else? And a good therapist, a good clinician will be able to help diagnose that. So anyway, we had a question.
We had a question come in. I know it might be a little bit further into the conversation. What are your suggestions to help someone that recently left, whether it be the J-Dubs or any other high control group?
I'm getting a lot of feedback on mine. Are you hearing feedback?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I can ignore it. It's not that bad.
I don't know if anybody in the audience can hear. If anybody can hear that feedback, I can't. Just let us know in the comments.
I don't know. Yeah. So when people first leave any kind of religion, and it doesn't even have to be high control, even what appears to be fairly moderate religions can be pretty insidious. I mean, Catholics can treat you pretty bad for leaving the Catholic Church in some countries or some communities. So I don't focus on high control groups nearly as much as some people do, because I see religious trauma coming from Methodist families, from Episcopalian families. So it's more than just, are you a high control JW or a Scientologist? I mean, hell, Islam is a high control everything. I mean, there's almost and nowhere you go in Islam there's not high control.
Yeah.
So there's a whole religion there that functions much like a cult does. Excuse me. So what do you do when you've recently left? That's the toughest time for anybody, is those first few months, because your brain is used to the security. It's a threatening environment, but it still feels comfortable here. And now you've left that. You've got parents or siblings or neighbors or former friends that disown you. So your social network is totally disrupted. And quite frankly, as human beings, we are social creatures. You take our social network away from us, that creates incredible stress in our brains. That alone can be traumatic. Simply leaving a religion can cause trauma. So this is a really important question that your viewer just asked. I want to help people prevent the trauma that comes from simply walking away from a religion they were forced into. Their parents didn't ask them, do you want to be a JW?
Nope.
They had no choice. So
Correct.
when they decided to leave the Catholic Church, or they decided to leave the Mormon Church or the JW Church, they were just taking control of their own life. They were basically saying, my parents don't have a right to tell me what I can and can't do. It's a declaration of independence. But that declaration of independence is like jumping out of an airplane. You're not sure if the parachute's going to open or not. I want to help people build a parachute. I want to help them land safely. And that's why I created the organization Recovering from Religion. And that's why we've got 300 volunteers that are waiting to talk to the person that just asked this question. Because what we can do is get you in touch with resources, all kinds of resources. We can get you in touch with other people going through the same thing. We got an entire JW group. We work with JWs all the time. If you're ex-Mormon, we can get you in touch with those. We can get you in touch with articles. We can get you in touch with psychological services. There's just so much we can help you, but you got to talk to us first. You got to tell us what you need, what you're experiencing. And I guarantee you will come to us and tell us whatever you want to tell us. We've already heard it 50 times in the last month. We hear this. The story is the same over and over again. Every religion uses the same techniques to indoctrinate. They may use them in different proportions, but it's the same technique.
Yep.
The Mormons aren't exactly the same way JWs are, but they sure do look alike when you look at the indoctrination methodology that they use. Yeah. So my answer is not the one they probably wanted to hear. My answer is talk to somebody who can help you. And I think our people are the best for doing that. But even if you don't want to talk to us, there's other people out there. Go find other ex-JW groups or ex-Mormon groups or whatever, ex-Hindu groups, ex-Muslim groups. There's lots of them out there. And most of them are very willing to help you. The second thing I see that happens, Shane, after somebody leaves, they look back and they basically say, damn, I was lied to my whole life. And their next response is almost uncontrollable anger for some people. It just pisses them off that they've wasted so much of their life trying to do what their God told them to do. And no matter how hard they tried, they always fell short. In the Bible, you're always short. So it's a con game to constantly do giving money, coming to the church, and feeling shitty about it at the same time. Because you can never feel good about what you've done. That's just not part of Christianity.
We've had another question come in too, Daryl.
Right.
What is the process to get started working with you and your team? Does insurance cover it? What does it cost?
It costs zero, nada, nothing. You can, if you want to pay us, we'll take the money. Just call it a donation. We're always looking for donations. We don't charge a dime for our services. We depend upon donors to keep us going. And we do a hell of a lot on very little. Our budget is teeny tiny, but our reach is global. We've got volunteers in 16 time zones. We got 300 volunteers. So, and these people, nobody gets paid. So you can just go on online, recoveringfromreligion.org, hit the chat button, and chat with one of our team. They're sitting there waiting to talk to you, and pretty much 24 hours a day. If nobody answers, remember, we're volunteers. Maybe somebody's actually asleep. I mean, we're not sitting up here waiting for, but chat back, or if you want to, you can call. We have direct phone lines from Australia, from South Africa, from the United Kingdom, from Canada, New Zealand. Where else do we have? So we've got 5 different countries you can dial us direct, so to speak. But you can chat with us from anywhere on the planet. Yeah. Now, I will say this. If you're chatting in from somewhere like Afghanistan or Bangladesh or Pakistan, if you're chatting with us from Saudi Arabia, a country where it's downright dangerous to be talking to us, use a VPN. Our volunteers will not talk to you. They see your chats coming from Saudi Arabia. The first thing they'll do is say, hang up and use a VPN. So it'll look like you're coming from Amsterdam rather than Riyadh or somewhere like that. We're very protective of people. We don't want anybody get hurt for talking to us. We want to help you, and we certainly don't want to be a cause of any problems.
So for those ones who don't know what a VPN is?
Virtual private network. You can also, there's other ways. Just Google it, search it. If you chat in with us and our agent says you need a VPN, they will give you a link. So they'll educate you right then and there. We're prepared for anything. We've been doing this for 12 years. We're 12 years old now, and we've been doing the chat line thing for about 9 years. So we know what we're doing, and we've got great training for our. By the way, this person that asked the question, if you want to work with us, you go to our website and you hit the volunteer button and you fill out the application. Yep. You'll get an interview. And then if you're accepted, then you'll get into the training track. We're expanding internationally a lot. Australia and New Zealand are our big push right now. But the next step is Spanish. So we're looking for a lot of Spanish speaking people to help us in the Spanish speaking world as well.
Now, I know that telephones are not the only way they can be part of being in a group call. What are some of the other ways, or at least one other way that I know of, because I've been part of one?
If you chat in with us or you call to our agent, they will give you a bunch of options. They'll tell you about our services. Some of our services include face-to-face meetings in local areas when we don't have a COVID. But with COVID, we put those online. So there's like a virtual face-to-face group out of Philadelphia. There's another one out of Sydney, Australia. There's another one in South Africa. But we see, and you can join any of those groups. And they're just groups of people who are talking about their journeys out of religion. And it's peer support. There's no psychotherapist there. We're not psychotherapy. We're just all peer support. That's a really important component. Then once a week these happen twice a week. I'm sorry. I believe it's every Friday. We have a virtual meeting, and anybody in the world can join that virtual meeting. And again, you'd have to come through our agent to find out when that meeting is. But we might have 20, 30 people from all around the world all meeting in that one little meeting on Friday afternoon. Then on Monday nights on Central Time, 7 Central Time US, we have something called RFRX, Recover from Religion X. It's kind of like TEDx, only it's RFR. We're better, I think. Yeah. And we will have a guest speaker. They'll speak for about an hour on a subject that is of importance to recovery, from religious recovery. It can be any number of things. How does your brain work when you're under religious recovery? Yeah. You name it, we've probably covered it. I've spoken 3 or 4 times. Black non-believers, Mandisa Thomas has spoken several times. Candace Gorham, a psychotherapist, has spoken several times. So it's a wide range of very educated, very well connected people who can talk about issues around religious recovery. And then after the talk is over, you can interact with the speaker. You can ask them questions. Yeah. And then we turn the recording off because we put recorded all these. After the recording goes off, then we just open the mic up and anybody can talk about anything. They can talk about, what they just heard the speaker say, or they can share something about their own journey, and they can hear what other people think and get advice from other people, and it becomes a support group. Those darn support groups, I'm shocked sometimes. They'll go 2, 3, 4 hours. It's mind-boggling. 20 to 50 people will be on Zoom talking to each other, listening to each other for hours after the RFRX on Monday. So what we try to do, Shane, is we just try to give people opportunities to connect with each other. Remember I said I want to help them build a parachute. Well, that's the parachute. It's the social network. We can connect you to people in your own community. I don't care where you live on the planet. We probably can help you find somebody who's going through the same thing you are. And that's important. That's why recovery religion exists. It's just to help people land less dangerously, because it's dangerous to jump out of that church airplane. You don't know where you're going to land or how hard you're going to land. And you may go into depression. You may have clinical psychological issues. We can prevent, or we can help you prevent those things. It is not uncommon for somebody to be clinically depressed after leaving a religion. I mean, they've lost everything. They may still have a paycheck, but they don't have anything else. They may have lost their spouse. They may have lost connection with their children. If you're a JW, you've lost your entire family oftentimes. So if you go into depression, it's a direct result of the social situation that you are now in. It's not because you're deficient or defective or there's something wrong with your brain. It's because your entire social networks collapsed. And you need to pat yourself on the back because you're moving towards a better world, a world that's not going to scare you every day you go to church about Armageddon or some other stupid idea, or tell you you're a horrible person going to hell because you're gay. We get LGBTQ people all the time chatting in with us, basically saying, I got married. I knew I was gay when I got married. Now what do I do? And I'm no longer, I don't want to be in this religion that hates me because I am gay. Or I'm gay and my parents are getting ready to kick me out of the house. I live in Salt Lake City area, as a Mormon, or a JW. It can be the same for any religion practically. And don't let those mild religions fool you. They can be just as insidious. Catholic parents can be just as nasty to their gay kids as anybody else.
So just what sort of encouragement would you give to somebody? You've talked about the depression. You've talked about the other little things that they might be going through. What bit of encouragement can you give them to keep on going forward, walking away from what's behind them, where they're getting all the trauma from, and just keeping on going forward?
Well, it's a good question, Shane. And probably one of the most important questions to ask of what we're doing tonight. And that is we do have to look forward, not backward. The hatred, the sense of betrayal, the pissed off about how I was raised, or the years of life that I, quote, lost because of my religion, that is all looking backwards. You can't live a life looking backwards. So you have to sooner or later realize that you got to look forwards. A friend of mine uses this analogy. You go out, you look carefully at homes, you buy a home, you put a lot of money and time into it. And the more you're in it, the more repairs it needs, until finally one day you realize you're sinking your whole paycheck into this black hole. Do you keep sinking the paycheck into the black hole, or do you cut your losses and say, I'm leaving this house, I'm going to sell it for whatever I can get and go somewhere else? Well, you can keep sinking by reveling in the hatred, in the disappointment, in the sense of betrayal. That's all looking back. That's all putting more money into that collapsing house. In some ways, you still haven't left the religion if you're still angry about it. You still haven't been able to leave it yet. Yeah. So I want you to look out in front. And the way you can do that is you can go find somebody else. Find a JW that seems to be managing well after 10 years. An ex-JW, or an ex-Mormon. Yep. And it doesn't have to be your own ex-religion. In fact, I would almost encourage you to go find somebody from another high control group. If you're an ex-JW, go find somebody who's an ex-Mormon and work with them. Listen to them. That's why we use these groups. It gets you and connected with these people, and then you can have a one-on-one conversation if you want, because they're going to help you realize it's tough right now, but in 5 years or 10 years, I can be where Sally is over here. She's doing well. She's gotten reconnected with her grandkids, or she's gotten a master's degree in, in chemistry or something. I see a lot of people saying, well, I missed out. I could have gone to college. Well, you could go back and get some training. You might even go back to college, or you can sit around bemoaning the fact that you didn't get a college degree. It's your choice. Now,
it's definitely a choice. You called out for Spanish speakers. What would you say to Regan?
Oh, great. All right, Regan. Well, here's what you do. You go to volunteer for us. And once you get through all the training, then you get online, you do some chats, you learn how to do it. And probably within 6 months or a year, we're going to be opening up. We're going to be opening up a whole channel just for Spanish speaking. I mean, no English, all Spanish. And we have to have our ducks in line. We have to have enough people like you, Reagan, or we can't do it. And it's going to take us a year to ramp up. And we have to have people like you trained and ready to go when we hit the go button on that channel. We have a Spanish channel right now. It's very small, but we do have a good discussion going on, and you'd be able to get in there and interact with those people. But the main thing is we're planning ahead a year or so. We know it took us basically 8 years to get where we are today in terms of the amount of people we're connecting with and the resources but because we've got the template in English, we're pretty sure we can reproduce the template in Spanish a lot quicker. But we still know it's going to take us probably 3 years to get really, really solid on the Spanish side. And we're a year away from just starting that, having that ready to go. So I really, Regan, if you speak Spanish, we want you. We need you. You could be. And here's another thing about it. I don't know about you, Shane, but I founded Recovery from Religion. And then another thing I founded, we'll talk later about, is the Secular Therapy Project. I love my whole career. I've always been on the starting edge of things. Almost every job I ever had, I was the first person in that job, or I created that job in a way that nobody before me had. And the cool thing about that is you are doing some big stuff. You're creating a template for other people to follow. There's something. Now I'm speaking as Daryl. Maybe Reagan doesn't want to do this, and I'm okay with that. It's just something about being on the starting end of something. There's so much. Yeah. It's so exciting to be on the beginning of something that's so big or has the potential to get there. And so, Reagan, if you were with us and we open up a year from now, you've already been trained. You're on the front end. You're one of the champions. You're the one of the founders, so to speak. So, am I overselling it right now?
We'd have to ask Regan. Regan would have to answer that one.
I'm only half kidding, but
all right, we've got an answer for you, Daryl. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Oh, well, cool. Being a visionary leader in this. Okay, well, I just hope it's not a religious leader, though. Yep. Well,
thank you for volunteering, Regan.
Yeah. Visionary program, being a leader in this world. Well, if she really wants to lead, this would be a good place to do it. because we're going to have leaders in several key positions as we move out. Right now, we've got leaders, very, very key leaders running our chatline program, key leaders running our international expansion. That's Sherry, Sherry. We've got a key leader running our online groups. We got a key leader running our Recovery from Religion X. So those are all leaders that probably hadn't even heard about Recovery from Religion 3 or 4 years ago, and now they're helping us run it. I mean, I don't run this organization. Frankly, Gail Jordan, our executive director, she runs the organization. Okay. And 6 years ago, she probably hardly knew anything about Recovery from Religion. Now she's been one of the leaders of it for a long time. Anyway, you can bring your leadership skills, or you can come to us and we will help you with your leadership skills. And I guarantee you will get a lot out of it.
Well, hopefully some more volunteers will come your way after talking about what you've been able to accomplish thus far.
I hope so too. There's one other thing we haven't talked about, and I want to make sure I get some time here before we have to leave, cool. Shane, and that is the Secular Therapy Project. Years ago, back in after I published my book, The God Virus, people were saying, I need a therapist. My therapist keeps sending me to Jesus, or thinks I need to pray more. or worse yet, they say my depression comes because I'm an atheist, or I don't believe in the religion of my parents anymore. Well, that's bullshit. And so what I did is I went out there and I created the Secular Therapy Project so that people could find a therapist that is guaranteed not to send you back to church. They're guaranteed to use scientifically validated, evidence-based treatments. They will not help you read your crystals, and they won't do any woo-woo new age bullshit. They're well trained in the practice and art of psychotherapy. So if you go to seculartherapy.org, click that button, a very brief registration as a client. You can then search and see if if there's a therapist near you, if you need some help. These people are educated. They know about religious trauma syndrome. They know the trouble that religion causes. Now, I want to make a caveat here for those of you who are in Australia. We need to start educating Australians. I think it may be true in New Zealand too. I'm not sure.
It definitely is. Yep.
It's a postal code problem, and we didn't Google. It's a Google thing. We can't help it. But if you get in here and you search for a therapist, we actually have 5 therapists in Australia, and I think we've got one in New Zealand.
Yep, but he filled out the form.
Yes, good. So we are starting to expand into New Zealand, Australia as therapists. We actually have therapists in 7 countries now, and we have 522 therapists. We've got over 25,000 people who have registered as clients looking for therapists. So if you go and make a note of this, if you're listening, if you go to search for a client in Australia, you put your postal code in and then put AUS behind it. Put your postal code in, which is four digits, and then put AUS. It will work. If you don't put that AUS behind it, it will think you're in the United States, probably in New Jersey or something, and you won't get a good therapist that's close to you anyway. Now, the other thing is a lot of therapists are doing distance therapy. They'll do it like you and I are talking right now on a Zoom or, something like this. So just because somebody's a long ways away from you doesn't mean they can't help you. You can contact them through our system, ask them if they'll help you, if they got the expertise that you need, and then you can, they set their own prices and everything. We don't have anything to do with that. But the service of finding them is free. We don't charge anything for that either. So that was the most important thing I wanted to end on.
No, that's cool. So just on the postcode thing, apart from Australia, just put your zip code in normally and it will get there?
Well, it's like a Google search for a zip code, and it works in every country. What we've unfortunately learned is it works in every country on the planet except Australia, and I don't know if it works in New Zealand.
Don't know.
I don't know how many digits do you guys have in
4. We have 4 in New Zealand.
Okay, then you probably need to put something like NZ behind it or something. I'm not
Oh, okay.
sure. But
Maybe
just
Sherry could test it.
yeah, Sherry might be able to help you. But the main thing is, I don't want you to get discouraged. We have therapists; they can help you. It's the system that we have to use from Google that's the problem. We have no control over that.
Okay.
And it's those darn Aussies. They should have made a 5-digit instead of a 4-digit.
The Australians. I don't know.
Oh, I'm kidding you. I'm not really. I need to get on with. I need to sign off pretty quick here, so I don't want to lose our time. Is there anything else you wanted to address or talk about?
We've covered. There's so much to do with the religious trauma. It's a great start for what you've covered. And you've explained it brilliantly with the process of, the world wars down to our day now and where it's going to.
Right, right.
Really want to say thank you very much for allowing us to take an hour of your time on a Saturday evening. And thank you for being here. It's been great chatting. And maybe later on,
okay,
get you back in and we can continue.
Let me throw something I wasn't clear about earlier, and that is there are treatments for religious trauma syndrome, just like there's treatments for any PTSD. But you have to find a therapist that's trained to do that. And that's why it's important to find somebody through the Psychotherapy Project.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Thanks, Shane.
Well, thank you very much once again. And for those ones who've been on our live stream, we've valued your input into the streaming, but also for those who are going to watch it later, we hope you enjoyed. We'll make sure the links are put in the descriptions so that if you need to reach out and get hold of Recovering from Religion, we'll have those contacts there for you so you can reach out to the team in any one of the countries that have been mentioned. And until next time, look after yourselves, keep safe, and have a great day or an evening or whatever time zone you're in. Until next time, thanks for being here, and we'll catch you later. Bye.